first step in a rude reality for thousands of Department of Education employees. Layoffs for the agency started tonight, and that's about half of the department's workforce is now gone. The secretary says that the rest of the workforce is likely to follow soon.
Is this the first step on the road to a total shutdown?
Yes. Actually, it is, because that was the president's mandate, this directive to me. What we did today was to take the first step of eliminating what I think is bureaucratic bloat. We wanted to make sure that we kept all of the right people and the good people to make sure that the outward-facing programs, the grants, the appropriations that come from Congress, all of that are being met, and none of that's going to fall through the cracks.
So Trump did, in fact, promise this, Bakari, and now he's following through. What do you think the impact is going to be?
I mean, I think that one of the things people fail to understand is actually how our public schools in this country are funded. People don't understand that we have a three-legged stool in the way that we fund our schools. You have your local tax dollars, your federal tax dollars, and your state tax dollars. And so when you make drastic cuts to the federal government, we're talking about your title programs, we're talking about your lunch programs, we're talking about the programs that affect your kids who have extraordinary or special needs. We're talking about all of those things that are going to be affected by draconian cuts such as this. If we want to go in and say that, look, and I think all of us could agree around the table that we're not preparing our kids for a 21st century global economy. If we wanted to start from that premise, and sorry to use, I'm not picking on you, but to use your words instead of whack, 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 whack. If we wanted to start from that premise and figure out how we can better educate our children, there are ways to do it other than draconian cuts. And I think in places like Mississippi, places like Arkansas, places like the great Commonwealth of Kentucky, South Carolina, and North Carolina, they're going to fill these cuts a lot more.
May I respond?
Please. I mean, it's an open show.
As an individual who worked in the education system for 14 years, there's 110,000 high schools in America. The majority of them are in New York, Florida, Texas, and California. Our reading and math scores are the worst in the G7 and the G20 in terms of how many dollars we spend to advance our children.
Okay.
Why? Unions. Unions that keep mediocre teachers in place in every high school in America when we should be firing them. You want to talk about whack as our theme tonight's show? I would like to fire teachers that don't... Wait. And I'd like to pay a lot more to the teachers that advance math and reading scores that push our system forward against every G7, G20 country. We have broken the system long ago through unions, and this is very unpopular.
But what are those cuts actually
What it means is
impact
the lowest paid person in America that deserves a lot more money is a great teacher.
I agree, as a former teacher.
And we can't, in the system of unions in America, we keep mediocrity festering, destroying the education of
respectfully, let me
children.
just tell you how misguided your statement is.
Not at all.
But I mean, I'm just going to point out the fact that...
Thank goodness I'm here.
But you're wrong, and let me tell you why.
I'm 100% right.
No, I want to tell you why you're wrong. Because the bottom 10 states that are underperforming, those states that I'm talking about in the South, let's take South Carolina, for example, or Mississippi. You want to tell me one thing they don't have? One thing they don't have: strong teacher unions. So there is no direct correlation.
They have weak teacher unions?
Or barely
But
any
they
at
have
all.
unions.
Yeah, but that's not the reason these places are failing.
So find
when was
me,
the last time?
if you look at 10 teachers, 4 of them are great. I want to double their salaries.
That's no question. I agree with you.
So why don't you just get rid of unions?
Now what happens if you have a quarter of shame where kids go to school and their heating and air don't work, where their infrastructure is falling apart, where they have to drink unclean water, or they come to school hungry?
Send the money to the states. That's what Trump is doing.
How does that fix the problem I just laid out to you?
Well, you got to fix the unions first, because we both agree bad teachers destroy advancement of children.
So I just have a question. Are you saying that the cuts to the Department of Education that happens right now are going to impact the unions?
I would rather the dollars that are put into running.
I know, but
the
you started talking about something else, but we're talking about the cuts to the Department of Education. I don't think those are directly...
No. You're cutting out the federal mandate and giving it to the state.
They're cutting the bureaucracy.
Yes.
I don't think they're cutting the money. They want to send the money directly to the states.
That's it.
Respectfully, if this bureaucracy that is in place now at the federal and state level, no matter what state you're talking about, we're doing such a bang-up job, we wouldn't have these terrible reading scores. We wouldn't have these terrible math and science scores. Something is broken, and there's one more issue that no one's talking about, and that is the issue of truancy. We've got 30+% truancy rates in some places. Not only can these kids not read, we cannot even find them. The bureaucracy has failed.
I would not disagree. Exactly. I would not disagree with either of you all on the fact that we are not preparing our children well enough.
But you want the state to
But that's
control
not.
this?
Absolutely not. And let me tell you why. I want there to be oversight. I don't necessarily want there to be a bloated bureaucracy, but what I do want is every child in this country to have an opportunity to succeed, regardless. And let me just tell you the biggest problem we have in this country, because you said unions. I will push back on you and say that the greatest problem we have is the fact that children are punished in this country because of the zip code that they're born into. And until you can find me some parity.
Different issue.
No, it's not.
Actually,
because
I mean,
the schools sit in those zip codes.
You can solve it with school choice.
Hang on a second, Kevin.
That's-
I mean,
the
I want
problem
you to
is that every
address
choice wouldn't be a-
what Bakari is saying. Okay, let's say that you get rid of the bureaucracy at the Department of Education. How do you ensure that kids are actually being educated and that they're not just being moved
Do you
out
think
of...
at the state level they hate children?
And that they're not just being...
You think at the federal level they hate kids?
That they're not just being moved out of the public school system because it's easier
Yeah.
to move them out than to educate them.
The one thing about education you can't deny is the reading and math scores. Unfortunately, that is the metric by which we test.
But do you understand my question?
No, I get it,
That
but
if
it's
you
not
take
dealing
the
with
lowest
the issue.
performing kids and you just take them out of the system, guess what those reading and math scores are going to do? They're going to go up. So how do you prevent
For
schools
them
from
to
doing
go
that?
up, you need great teachers.
Well, I think there's also a concept of teaching to the test, which actually doesn't create critical thinking skills to prepare people to go out and be thriving adults. You can actually have a student go through college or go through high school or go through grade school and let me finish. Thank you. And just be taught to the test. And so you literally. You know why? I know because I had an experience. I will never forget.
Right?
I was a teacher. I will never forget. We were going to take our regions, and we were really wanting to make sure our scores. So we were teaching to the test. The same night, I went home and watched the episode on The Wire, and they taught the exact same thing because they were teaching to the test. We were not preparing my students.
What percentage of your colleagues, when you were a teacher, sucked? How many?
I think that I come from a family of educators.
Everybody
My
was great?
grandmother
Everybody was
was an
great?
educator. My aunt was a superintendent. My sister is a teacher. I think teaching is one of the hardest professions.
I agree.
And I think when you wake up every day and you say, I am going to take care of other people's children and try and advance them.
You're not answering my question.
I don't think every teacher. No. Because I think that it is
They're all
so
just
easy.
great.
I think it is so easy
Exactly.
for people to be so disrespectful to teachers. It is a hard profession.
not answering the
In
question.
every single profession, there are people who are good and there are people who could be better.
Out of
But the
10,
majority.
How many suck? How many out of 10?
All right, let me ask Van a question because
One,
let's say that everybody agrees we're not where we need to be as a country. What's wrong with trying to do something completely different? What's wrong with not just continuing what we've been doing that hasn't been working?
I mean, for me, I think there's more investment that's needed. I think we need to invest into early Head Start. Yeah. I think one of the hugest indicators on how a kid is going to perform in school later on in their scholastic career is how early they get what they need. So I think there needs to be more investment into early Head Start, more investment into other things that deal with some of the outside factors that keep kids from excelling in the classroom.
And the point that you brought up is really good because I want to, go ahead. Scott.
Well, just over the last 50 years in this country, the amount of money we spend on education has gone this way, but test scores have gone this way. It's not the money.
It's where
But I agree with Kevin a little bit tonight because what we're talking about is one, because of the simple fact that he's talking about creating more teachers. And so Kevin's going out on this limb and saying that we need to make sure that we're investing in these HBCUs, in these community colleges, in these technical colleges, to make sure that we're putting and investing and making sure that people actually go to school to come out with these degrees to be teachers. And so I applaud you for that. I also think it's really easy for people to pile on teachers.
Yes.
Jobs that other people wouldn't take for $30,000 a year because teachers now have to not only go to work at your elementary school, but they work at Cracker Barrel too. Like they have other jobs.
Horrible.
It is horrible. They have roommates.
And they also need master's degrees.
Yes.
And advanced degrees. So these are not people just rolling
These
out
are
of high
underpaid
school.
people.
Does anyone believe in school choice at this table?
No.
I do. Why not?
The problem is that you have to make every school a good choice. And school choice works in metropolitan areas where you have things like transportation. But in the rural places, if you have 100 miles and you have 4 schools,
we
and all
trap
schools are
a lot of urban kids in bad schools.
And the problem with that is that if you go to school choice, and I talk to Roland Martin and others about this all the time, you'll have something like white flight after Brown v. Board. But instead of white flight, you'll have the people who can't afford to leave that school will leave, and it will cause a drain at those
Well,
schools.
I think we ought to give scholarships to the poorest kids to get them out of the worst schools. Is what I think.
Is it going to have transportation?
Or just fix the schools where they go.
But will it have
Or just
transportation?
fix
We
the schools
can't
where they go.
Will it have
litigate the whole
transportation?
school choice
Right.
issue tonight
Will it
on the
have
show,
transportation?
but it's a good discussion for another time.
now
Coming
that
up
cost
next,
is-
a Justice Department official says she was fired because she refused to restore the gun rights of a MAGA fan. Mel